Hello, hi, welcome, how are ya? Hope you're well. This is a Patreon Q&A where I, your host, Mini-Me, or Peter, answers my patrons' questions. So if you want to ask a question in the future, you can become a patron from $1 a month, or you can just ask a question in the comments of this video, and I'll do my best to answer it down there. Let's get on with it. Deadly Premonition is a masterpiece. Wet review when? Also, are you excited for the Dead Space /RE4 remakes? The wet review is soon. I have wet on my desk with me. It's sitting there taunting me, asking me to play it. I've played wet before, and I remember quite liking it, but I was like 18 years old when I played it, and I was getting into the old alcohol at the time, and I remember playing wet for one night and almost finish it and drinking a lot of Corona-ritas. I thought I bought Coronas, but they were the little tiny versions of Coronas. So I just have this memory of like drinking those and playing wet, and it felt very Mexican. But yeah, so while my memory of wet is good, it's also impaired. Also, are you excited for the Dead Space /RE4 remakes? The Dead Space remake is out, and apparently it's really, really good, and I am planning on playing it sometime. But I played Dead Space around the time it came out, probably a few years afterwards, maybe, and I wasn't as blown away by it as sort of the internet is, I suppose. I find Dead Space to be pretty good, maybe great. Has a great atmosphere. Shooting limbs off enemies is satisfying, and stomping on them is satisfying. But it was a game I felt like I was playing trying to understand why everyone liked it so much, more than just playing it and liking it, you know what I mean? Like it feels like a really, really solid game to me that doesn't elevate into the sort of all-time great horror game space in the way that the internet thinks it does. But, you know, that's an outlying opinion. I'm probably just wrong. It's probably fantastic. So as far as the Dead Space remake goes, I'm interested in that. Apparently it's really good, but I'm not that interested because I didn't really love Dead Space. As far as Resident Evil 4 goes, look, I didn't finish Resident Evil 4 either, but my experience with that was like, wow, this is really cool. I should play more of this. And then I just never did. So it's kind of the opposite thing, right? Like, Dead Space, I was like, I've played enough of this, I don't think I need to play any more of this, whereas Resident Evil 4 is like, I want to play more of this, I should have played more of this. So, while I wouldn't say I'm a super fan of either game, I'm a lot more interested in the Resident Evil 4 remake. Not that I think that original game needs a remake, it still feels pretty good to play. Cyclops007, who is your favorite multiplayer character in GoldenEye 64? Yeah, like, I played Oddjob a lot to annoy my siblings. I was the younger child, I didn't know the controls very well, and it felt like Oddjob gave me a leg up. But otherwise, I always liked Boris. I always liked Alan Cummins' portrayal of Boris. I always thought he was silly in his like yellow Hawaiian shirt. Have you played Mischief Makers 64? No, I haven't. No one's ever asked me that before. Maybe I should play it. Crunklehorn. Have you played Spec Ops: The Line? Do you have any thoughts on it? If not, I recommend going in blind if you're curious. I played Spec Ops: The Line around the time it came out, and I think it's one of the best games of that generation, right? Like, I think it was so nice to play a AAA game that was so strong in its convictions and strong in its vision and bold and unusual and like challenging to play. Like, sort of, not but, you know, confronting to play. It's a really smartly put together game at a time when a lot of FPS games were really, really stupid. And I think it's had an interesting lifespan since its release. I think a lot of people have sort of heard that it's a really interesting meta game and sort of gone into it knowing that. And sorry, this might be spoiler. It's been 10 years. I think a lot of people expected a lot from it going into it, and that kind of ruined their experience of it a lot in a way. I don't know. It seems like it's a very controversial game, in a way, according to the internet, but I personally think it's absolutely brilliant. Who are your favorite YouTube content creators at the moment? Oh, and have you heard of the TV show Severance? If you haven't, you so need to watch it. I've heard of it because people keep telling me to watch it, so no, I haven't watched it and I should. I don't, I don't, I don't watch a lot of YouTube, which I know might sound fun. It's almost because I'm a YouTuber, I don't watch a lot of YouTube, because when I watch YouTube videos, I'm thinking about YouTube as like as a creator would, and I'm sort of analyzing everyone else's videos and being like, I should do this and I should do that, and they do this really well and they don't do this really well, and I find it sort of best to disconnect from YouTube during my leisure time, because YouTube is such a big part of my life. So I don't really watch a lot. I occasionally watch like a Linus Tech Tips video if it comes up in my feed, or I'll watch a lot of skateboarding videos. But I don't watch a lot of YouTube really. I'm always listening to like podcasts and stuff instead. That's usually my sort of online content these days. Jam, or JAM, you've been given $1 bajillion to establish Mini-Me Productions and free license to adapt any IP, be it a film, TV series, comic, etc., into a game. What IP do you adapt, and what kind of game is it? P.S. It's 2007, so it has to be for PS3/360. That's good. I like that. 2007. Why not? I think a game, considering it's 2007, I think a game based on The Sopranos, but with the gravitas of something like Mafia. Like it brings a sort of, it's not above it in the way that Scarface was, right? I think a game that is taking what Scarface and Saints Row 2006, the first one, and the Godfather game did, and taking all that systems-based gang control, territory war design further than those three games did, would be really, really interesting. I think, you know, there's more money-making systems and more drug dealing systems and just more systems, basically, because those open world games were so fascinating at the time, and it felt like a real one and done thing. You know, like GTA 4 came out and we kind of went back to that sort of, it's an open world game with linear missions that you do, and that's what open world games became for a long time. But there was this quick flash in the pan where you had these really, really interesting, very emergent, very systems-based open world games with The Godfather and Saints Row. And I think that a Sopranos game could take all of those systems and build upon them. And yeah, like, those games are, they're amazing, they're kind of great, but they're frustratingly limited in that when you play them, you can feel the potential there, right? So yeah, I think that would be a fun idea. Guilherme Silva, what do you know? You don't need to lie or be too kind about Brazil, my country. Just know one thing, it's not like Fast and Furious 5. Look, a lot of what I know about Brazil, like when I think of Brazil, I think of Fast and Furious 5. So well done. Yeah, I mean, I've absorbed Brazil through Fast 5 and through the Rio Olympics. You know, the beaches look beautiful. I don't know. I don't know much about Brazil, really. I hear there's a lot of government corruption there, which sounds horrible. There's a lot of wealth inequality. I hear video games are very, very expensive there, which, you know, that sucks. But, you know, the scenery seems amazing and the food seems very nice, and I'd like to visit sometime. But yeah, I won't pretend I know much about Brazil. Apologies. Maybe I should get myself educated. Nicholas Wilson, do you have a roadmap for your channel in 2023? Vaguely. I've made roadmaps in the past, like I've gotten out pen and paper and been like, this is what I'm going to do this year, and I've always failed to stick to them, so I don't really do that anymore, but I've kind of got the next few months mapped out, and yeah, I want to focus on getting videos out more frequently and expanding into areas other than video, like podcasts and second channel talking stuff. I guess that's still video, but you know what I mean. I've talked about this a lot in my last Q&A about like what I want to do with the channel in the future. Yeah, that's kind of the plan for the next few months, but I don't have a big roadmap. I want to focus at the moment on growing the channel more than doing my own thing, because I felt like I've spent the last like 2 years doing my own thing a lot, and I want to kind of, you know, make it big, make it a good thing. Dylan Kelly, have you ever played Frogger He's Back 1997, PS1 and PC? I haven't. I played a game called Zapper One Wicked Cricket, which was very similar. It was kind of like a Frogger ripoff, which is fun. But no, I have not. Apologies. Conifer, SSR, do you have a favorite classic game, NES/SNES era? Yeah, it is a blind spot for me, right? Like, I'm not that old. I didn't grow up with those consoles at all. I've always been very fond of a game called Gunsmoke, though, a Capcom game. It started in the arcades and they ported it to the NES, and it's kind of this vertically scrolling cowboy game where you can shoot at a 45-degree angle left or right, and you go through these stages and occasionally sort of upgrade your weapons and your health and all this stuff. And it's a really fun, simple game with a great soundtrack. Can't go past Mario 3, Mario World, but it is all a bit before my time. I like the RPGs of that era from what I've played. I think Chrono Trigger is fantastic and holds up amazingly, and the early Final Fantasy games are very impressive too, but it is a blind spot, and I do need to sort of explore retro games more than I have. Siren Songs just got a CRT. Very good. Excellent. Great purchase. What game should I give a try on it? So far, I've just used it for Earthbound via my Wii, so I'd love to hear what else is good. Earthbound's a good pick. Like, I know I just talked about how I don't play SNES games much, but really the sort of 16-bit and 8-bit eras, especially the 16-bit games will look fantastic on the CRT, or at least the good-looking ones will look fantastic. Generally, I feel like that's what's best to play on a CRT, but I'm very fond of the PS1 and the PS2, so I want to recommend stuff like the first couple of Silent Hill games go amazingly on a glowing, slightly blended CRT screen. Something like Racing Lagoon, which I know is in Japanese, but if you can get the English patch working, Racing Lagoon looks incredible. Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex looks very good, and I'll mention that game every time I can, and it sounds amazing, it looks amazing, and I played through it again on a CRT, or I played it again on a CRT after I made my video, and it's truly amazing. It made me love the game even more. You should play all the classic light gun games if you can afford to buy a light gun. They are quite something. I love Time Crisis. The first two games are just incredible, good fun, so cheesy. Yeah, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of a lot of PS1 JRPGs look great, and like Metal Gear Solid and Vagrant Story, and the Final Fantasy games all look really good. Just anything from that era that looks good will kind of look better on a CRT usually. What game would you make a sequel? This is from Luna Dalton. What game would you make a sequel for, given infinite money and resources? Can be released in whatever year you want, a la releasing a Tomb Raider 4 on PS1, or be a retro revival, whatever. Let me have some water. Let me think about it. This is something that I guess I have a million different answers to. I'd love a true sequel to Driver 3. I'd love a new skateboard park tycoon with a giant budget. Could be the perfect video game. Imagine making like skate parks and skating them with like Skate 3's physics. Oh, could play that forever. A follow-up to Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex with the same level of coolness, or Rise to Honor, or I'm always devastated that the Sleeping Dogs sequel got cancelled. I think Sleeping Dogs was onto something truly charming, and a sequel could have fully realized that. A sequel to Far Cry 2 that isn't Far Cry 3, some game doing what Far Cry 2 did again would be fascinating, with its sort of... Far Cry 2 is really interesting because it's quite a systematically deep game, but it presents as kind of a dumb first-person shooter with Call of Duty controls. So like, there's all these layers built underneath it of sort of unscripted design and the fire systems and all the vehicles and destruction systems everywhere, and it sort of has all these systems without being as impenetrable as something like Deus Ex, and it's really fascinating. I'd like a Deadly Dozen 3. Why not? Skate 4. Make a Skate 4 that isn't sort of always online, whatever they're doing. Mercenaries 3 as well. After playing the Mercenaries games recently, that's on my mind. How they could put together a Mercenaries. There's just there's just so many games that come to mind. Like, yeah, it's hard to nail one down. But this is something that I daydream about a lot. So thank you for the question, and thank you everyone for the questions, because that's all of them. Yeah. Hope you've all been well. Take care. Goodbye.